How's everything going today, guys? My name is Copycat, and welcome to another video where I look more in depth at something in the Mario realm. Where in this one, I want to focus on different platforms that our mustachioed hero has to traverse on. Where here specifically, we're going to look at the most dangerous ones in each of the games. I'll explain where you'll find these, what exactly they do to you, and how you can interact with them without dying. But before we get started, I hope you all subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. The first game to come out in the mainline series is Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1985. Having one platform I'd say is pretty dangerous to maneuver on in the regular old lifts. Found usually over voids, these platforms move up and down or side to side, where if you miss your jump between them, you'll fall and lose a life. There are also the balance lifts, where when you stand on one of the platforms, it begins to lower, and the one attached to it via a wire raises, where if you go too low, it will actually fall into the void and could lead to a death if you aren't careful. The Western version of Super Mario Bros. 2 came out for the NES in 1988. Having two specific platforms I want to look at, starting off with the icy ones. These are only found throughout each stage of World 4. Which causes your character to really lose their traction to the point where it makes dodging enemies hard and falling off the ledge into the void very easy. Another World 4 platform I want to talk about in the context of this video are the whales, who squirt out water from their spouts that could be stood on to reach higher up areas. However, they can cause you damage if you accidentally touch the side of the water, so even though these creatures are helpful, they can also be harmful if they're used wrong. The final of the original NES trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 3 that came out in North America in 1991. Having a couple of platforms I think we should look at, beginning with the classic in the donut lifts. When these things are stood on for too long, they then begin to fall, which if you aren't quick enough can lead to a loss of life, especially if they're over a void or over lava. However, if you do move fast enough, they remain unaffected, so quickness is key. Although in places like Bowser's Castle, that isn't always an option, especially if you aren't powered up in some way. The other I want to show off are the rotary lifts, which spin along an axis either indefinitely or periodically depending on where you come across them. Of course, if you get caught up in these spinning things, then some pretty wacky stuff can happen to Mario, where if you get flung, and it's the wrong way, it can lead to a loss of life. The very first handheld game in the series, Super Mario Land, came out as a launch title for the Game Boy in 1989, where really the most dangerous platforms in it are just the regular lifts. These aren't really included because of dangerous game mechanics, but because of how difficult it is to control Mario on this rudimentary system, where most lives are lost because of a missing jump that should be easy to make. I get that this is an older experience that didn't necessarily age well, but it's just something that always stuck out to me even as a kid, where I'd play the NES entry, then play this, and just end up feeling frustrated about how this one felt. Up next is Super Mario World that would come out for the follow-up Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990, having three very tough platforms that are in some of the most dangerous spots in the title, kicking things off with the count lifts. These are found primarily in one stage, Valley of the Bowser 3, where when stood on, the number on them begins to count down, disappearing completely when it reaches 0. Obviously, these are placed over voids, so there's tons of risk involved when you have to jump between them. Plus, there are other obstacles and foes that want to get in your way, so I bet you'll lose a few lives when you play this one out for yourself. The second I want to look at from this one are the skull rafts, that when gone on, moves through lava, allowing you to traverse this dangerous hazard. This is no easy feat, as you have to deal with tons of blargs, other obstacles that really get in your way, and of course the deadly lava, where in this game if you touch it at all it will instantly kill you, which is sorta rough. Lastly, I want to showcase the snake platforms that also move through a stage when stood on, but this time in mid-air, with the hazards usually being below and above them. Also, of course, with obstacles placed inconveniently in your way so that you'll fall to your death. The movements of these blocks seem super unpredictable, especially if it's the first time you've played the stages they're in, making it a little bit more simple if you've played it before, but still no easy feat. The sequel to Super Mario Land, given the title of the 6 Golden Coins, came out for the Game Boy in 1992. Having a few platforms I think are worth looking at, starting with the balls on chains, found only in the 3rd level of the Mario zone. When you stand on these balls, they move along the chains over top of a series of spikes that can damage you if you fall into them, where when they reach the end of their routes, they'll start to flash and disappear, so you'll have to jump off them before that happens. Oh yeah, also, a giant bullet bill is basically being fired at your face the entire time while this is happening, so you have to worry about that as well, which makes this kind of rough. The next 3 I want to mention all can be found within Wario's castle, being the bone lift, the skull platform, and the propeller platform, all found over lava, so if you make one misstep, you will die. The bone lifts are interesting as when stood on, they either begin to lower into the lava or raise up to the ceiling to the spikes above, so you have to move quickly as there's dangers from multiple fronts. The skull platforms are deadly as they instantly crumble when stood on, which happens really fast, leaving you no time at all to think other than just trying to move forward. The last is the propeller platform that you need to ride on to progress through the lava sections, although there are times that you either have to duck to get under an obstacle, or jump quickly or risk falling off into the lava. People always complain online about the intense difficulty spike between the castle and the rest of the zones, and these platforms really add to that nightmare. The prequel/sequel to Super Mario World, titled Yoshi's Island, came out for the SNES in 1995, having a bunch of platforms that are dangerous, so many of which that I want to just quickly list off each one and why they deserve to be shown here. There's the countdown platforms that have a number on them that when stood on begin to count towards 0, that when reached means they disappear. The rotating paddle wheels that you have to move yourself by jumping on them, always placed over voids. The ski lifts that let you traverse through the snowy mountainsides, sometimes with very little visibility. The spinning logs that when stood on for too long begin to rotate that can help or hinder Mario. The spotted platforms that are spiked on one side and normal on the other. The seesaw that's affected by Yoshi's weight, found mostly over lava, that balances on a stake that when you shift your weight too much, it will fall off and leave you in a vulnerable state. The first with gameplay based within the 3D realm is Super Mario 64 for the N64, having a few platforms that would be classified as pretty dangerous, beginning with the 15-piece puzzle. This is the one in Lethal Lava Land that creates the picture of Bowser when completed, containing 8 red coins on them that need to be collected to gain the star. This acts like a real-world sliding puzzle in that the pieces slide on the ground, sometimes putting an empty space where you're standing, so you could fall into the void and take damage. However, in this game, you don't instantly die when touching it, and instead just start to burn, which may or may not be more annoying, I'm not sure. Next, I want to mention a few platforms you can find in the Rainbow Ride course, all of which contain the danger of falling off into the void and losing a life. First and foremost is the magic carpet, that you have to ride on through set paths to get to certain sections of the stage. Also having to avoid obstacles and hazards while on it, as well as needing to battle with the camera, which might actually be the worst hindrance. Here you're going to come in contact with a propeller-like platform that can knock you off your feet. The falling blocks that are basically donut blocks which slowly fall when stood on. The pyramid platform that gets flipped over for a few seconds when the switch is triggered, where when you run out of time it can cause you to fall off the side. And the swing that moves like a pendulum back and forth, where you can easily miss your jump when getting off it. Lastly, I just want to showcase the wire platforms that move along a predetermined path through the lava that can lead to some pretty sticky situations. These usually have a pole above them that you need to grab to stay on to keep above the lava. However, if you do make a mistake where you find these in the Bowser's Fire Sea, that can definitely lead to some deaths. The next to come out, also based in the 3D realm, is Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube. Having a lot of deadly platforms, so many that again, I'm just gonna list them off or we'd be here all day. These include the blue and yellow blocks that turn clockwise and counterclockwise, the flipping platforms that move along and flip on a set path, the green block, which is just a long thin platform that spins when stood on, the multicolored block platforms that slide in and out of walls, the red triangle that moves only in one direction that you might have to stand on once in a while, the star, which are rotating platforms that you have to jump on, the white blocks, which are just giant cube things that you need to platform on which move in some insane ways, the sand block that crumble when you're on them for too long, and lastly, the yellow pegs that move from side to side that you need to jump between. If you didn't notice, all of these are found only in the secret levels that you can find in each of the game's courses. Always set over a void, as well as done floodless. So this is insane without that extra bit of protection. Nintendo would eventually return the series to its 2D realm with the release of New Super Mario Bros. For the dual screen system. Having two platforms we should look at, starting with the rolling logs. These only appear in the underground sub-areas of World 6-3, where you need to jump continuously on the logs or risk falling off into the poison and dying instantly. This gets a bit harder in the second sub-area with the piranha plants, so if you aren't powered up, this really could give you some trouble. Also, I want to mention the rotating platforms that turn in 90-degree rotations either clockwise or counterclockwise. Here found in the first castle of World 8. These are also over lava, so one wrong move will result in a death. Although they move pretty slowly, so it shouldn't be that bad. I guess also before we move on, I should talk about the crumbling ledges that are large rocks teetering on top of other rocks, moving once you stand on them. After a bit, they'll topple over and you'll either have to jump off or fall into, guess what? Lava. Up next is the space-based Super Mario Galaxy that was released for the Wii in 2007. Having one very dangerous platform that I remember losing a lot of lives on, in the sinking rocks of the melting molten galaxy. This is something you come across in the sinking lava spire mission, where you have to run up it as it gets destroyed and melts away into the lava, gaining a star if you reach the top. At first, this can be a bit frightening to traverse with the lava so close to you, so you end up dying as you get flustered and make a few mistakes. Also, I want to show two platforms from the Luigi's Purple Coin mission in the shrinking ones and the yellow square ones, both of which try to trip you up when you go for this level star. The shrinking platforms do just that when you step on them, eventually withering away until there's nothing there at all, exposing you to the void or dark matter below. The yellow squares are different as they begin to rotate when you step on them, which will really slow you down on your mission and may also make you stumble if you accidentally long jump into one. The second installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii in 2009, where in this one platform that's very dangerous to use is the Bolt Lift, especially the one in the Star Coin sub-area over the void of the World 4 airship. This can be moved along a wire if you constantly jump on it, as stopping at all will cause you to fall off its side, where if you do it correctly you'll be able to collect the Star Coin and make it to the pipe. These made their debut way back in Super Mario Bros. 3, but weren't really implemented well by the design team as you never really had to use them to get to anything meaningful, and they weren't put in any risky spots so they didn't matter. In the sequel to the space-based entry, Super Mario Galaxy 2, there's only really one platform that fits the parameters of this video in the flipping blue/red panels, found here primarily in a tough spot of the final challenge, the Grandmaster Galaxy. The way these work is that every time you spin, they flip and switch from their red side to their blue side and vice versa, which without the cloud power-up makes things hard, especially when you have to avoid the different obstacles. Nintendo would blend aspects of the series' 2D and 3D roots with the creation of Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS. Having a large amount of platforms we're going to look at, so again, I'm going to go through each one pretty fast and explain them. There's the really fun beat blocks that phase in and out of existence depending on the beat of the music. The Bolt, which is just a more giant version of the Bolt Lift we just looked at. The crumbling platform that just completely breaks away when stood on. The cylindrical platform cage that rolls over lava. The donut block, which makes its 3D environmental debut, technically at least in this form. The flip panels that creates a temporary pathway over voids. The red/blue panels that here flip every time you jump and not spin. The spine coaster that follows a track through lava where you have to avoid mini hazards. And lastly, the tapering platforms, which is a wire cage that sinks into lava when Mario stands on them for too long. The next game to feature a mustachioed hero is New Super Mario Bros. 2. They came out for the 3DS in 2012. Where really there's just one platform I want to talk about from it, in the segmented one that's the key focus of World 6-2. Now, I'm not sure why they call this a segmented platform when it really is just a bone coaster/giant skeleton that you use to traverse through the lava of that level, with enemies dropping in on you from above. This sort of acts like an auto-scroller as you're forced one way through the level, and can be sort of difficult if you aren't prepared to fight the enemies, although it's not as hard as other ones we've seen in this video. The final installment of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii U in 2012, having a couple of deadly platforms, with the first being the leaves that wither away and die in the Skyward Stalk stage. As you can see, this is an auto-scroller where you're traversing upwards on the leaves that sprout out of the vine. However, if you wait too long, the leaves will brown and eventually fall, causing you to go down with them if you're unlucky. The other tough platform I want to look at are the limited lifts, that move through lava or poison, only stopping if the number of enemies on it matches the number that's on the lift. This means you can't just rush through things, and you have to defeat every foe you come across, which can lead to some really tight situations where you might lose a life. Also in the Wii U, Nintendo would put out Super Mario 3D World in 2013, containing one platform that will give you trouble during your playthrough, which is the Arrow Lift, specifically the ones in the Broken Blue Bully Belt. As you can see, these platforms quickly raise and lower out of the liquid hot magma to the point where you can't rest for a single second, even if you were powered up. I remember when I first came across this, I almost lost every single life that I had gained up until that point, failing over and over and over, as the jumps are a lot longer than they seem, which makes things nerve-wracking. In the absolutely massive Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch, there's a few platforms I want to show off, with the following ones being the first, which can be very annoying in a few of the challenge sub-areas. When you interact with these things, they begin to crumble away and you're exposed to fall into the void if you aren't careful. Because in this game there's no lives, unfortunately the word dangerous doesn't mean too much here, so mere encumbrance might be a better description, but who knows. Also, I really do think I should mention the flower roads, which materialize in front of you over voids while also dematerializing behind you, meaning you have to stay in the sweet spot if you want to stay alive. This is most risky in a long journey's end, as if you die here, you'll have to start all the way back at the beginning, where there's many places you can fall off, even with the help of Yoshi's Flutter ability. The final of this video, and newest entry in the franchise, is Super Mario Bros. Wonder that came out for the Switch in 2023. Having one platform I died several times trying to use in the bouncy, transparent, triangular ones, that apparently are called Sankaku trampolines. The way you bounce off these things is very hard to get used to, as you can actually go flying too far if you aren't careful. Something that's a grand pain, especially during the invisible badge part of the Test Badge Marathon. Honestly, I think there could have been better ones, but I couldn't find a good one to fit into this video, so if I did leave one out, then please let me know in the comments below. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to my channel. Also, I upload daily shorts, so go check those out. They're just really fun clips that you might not see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!